What's going on YouTube? So of course the Outback is one of the most important Subaru products, and today we're standing next to the all-new 2026 model. Now we've already showed you guys kind of the general overview and full lineup of the Outback models, but we wanted to kind of make a separate video about the limited trim specifically. I think this occupies a price point that's going to be very compelling to a lot of people. So without further ado, let's jump right in and see if this limited trim is the trim for you. Now, jumping right in with the exterior design. This, of course, is a really big deviation from the previous versions of the Outback. And it's because they've kind of made things a lot more boxy and more SUV-like than the previous more wagon-like appearance. So you'll see right up here in the front, we have a new squared-off fascia right through here. Very chunky surrounds. It's going to be a matte finish on the center section and then a gloss black along the top with your big prominent logo. Obviously, the Outback has always been known for having that rugged demeanor, and that continues with our thick cladding down here at the bottom and 8.7 inches of ground clearance for the limited trim. Now, the lighting is also quite a bit different than other Outbacks of the past. You'll see we have a new split design with our daytime running light and turn signal indicator at the top, and then a projector LED headlight for low and high beams. It's also adaptive in the center section, and then you have the LED fog lights. Now, as far as the wheels are concerned, we've got an 18-inch alloy for the limited trim. That's actually the standard size now for 2026 across all of the trim levels. And as you can see, we've got the matte black finish. You also have the kind of thick cladding around the wheel arches there to give it a boxy appearance. And then up here at the top, we have a gloss black finish on our mirrors. This trim level will come standard with blind spot monitoring and heating.
Now, we've been talking a lot about this new Outback being more SUV-like than ever before, and in terms of the side design, we're once again going to have a little bit more of a squared-off look than Outbacks of past, but in terms of overall vehicle length, it's still about 191 inches, so it's not much longer than the previous Outbacks. However, it is an inch and a half taller than previous Outbacks, which you'll see how that translates to space a little bit later on. In terms of design, we have the body color piece right here in the center. We also have the raised roof rails. Those are going to be included on every single Outback this year. And let's go ahead and head around to the rear design of this limited version. Now, I really love the way this particular model looks, and one of the reasons for that is because we have a new paint color. This is River Rock Pearl, so this is a really cool gray color. There's also going to be a new green color to the lineup for 2026. And in terms of the rear design, we have a completely new design back here with the full-length taillights going across the back. Once again, a little bit more squared off than previous Outbacks. Up here at the top, we have a spoiler. We also have a rear window wiper through the center section. And then in terms of this, we have Outback branding prominently through the rear. Of course, the car is a little bit dirty. We are at the media drive of this product, so we did off-road this model a little bit earlier in the day. Now, in terms of your taillights, these are going to be a partially LED setup, so your LED brake light, LED reverse light, and you do have an incandescent turn signal indicator. And then dropping down to the lower fascia, all of this is going to be finished in a matte plastic. You have Subaru stamped into this area, and as far as the tow rating, that comes in at 2,700 pounds because this is the base powertrain model. It is also worth noting you can get the Limited XT, but that's going to have a few more features than what you see here on the base Limited. Now, it wouldn't be a Subaru if you didn't have all of your active safety features as standard equipment that will continue across all trim levels of the Outback. And additionally, you're going to get things like reverse automatic braking this year. Now, one thing you will miss out on is the touring exclusive hands-free highway driving at speeds of up to 85 miles per hour. That is going to be reserved just for your top-end Outback this year. But guys, we need to talk about what you get on the inside for the money. But first, if you're new here, we're brothers and we've been reviewing cars since we were 12
and 16. We started young, and since then we've reviewed over 2,000 cars at every price point.
And if you want to know about all the latest and greatest rides, then make sure to subscribe to be a part of our Car Confections family.
Let's learn a lot and have some fun with all the newest cars. All right, now let's check out the cabin of the limited Outback. Here's our key fob, typical Subaru key fob. Of course, you have standard smart entry really across all of the trim levels, not just this limited trim. This model doesn't have the power folding mirrors though, but you can still reach behind the handle and unlock the door. Now looking inside the interior of the Limited Outback, as you can see, we've got a very distinct design from previous generations if you owned one of those. And let's start by talking about the seat. So one of the things I like about the Limited trim is the fact that this comes with a real leather seat. The lower trims are going to come with StarTex, which is a faux leather, but this does give us that real leather experience, which is quite nice with the perforation as well, and that does feel soft and supple. In terms of the seat adjustments, we have 10 ways of power adjustment. Just note that you will be missing, compared to the Touring trim, a 4-way lumbar support as well as a extension. You also have memory seats up there on the door, which is of course important if your family has multiple drivers. But let's climb on inside and get into the details. Now, looking at the rest of the materials inside the interior, the Limited trim will have a leatherette across the armrest, but it has a cloth trim through the center of the door, and then a soft touch plastic at the top. The upper dashboard finished in a soft touch plastic with a texture, and then the entire center section here again will be the cloth trim. I have to say, though, I kind of think that should be a leatherette. Generally, you see a matching between the seat material and the materials that are used on the door trim and the dashboard. So in this case, you have real leather seats, but you have the cloth on the door trim. I think that makes this look a little bit cheaper than it could in terms of the overall interior, because it's otherwise nice and high quality. Now we'll fire it up with the push button start. Now we'll jump into the individual features of the interior, starting with the gauge cluster. So the Limited will come with the 12.3-inch digital gauge cluster. That's actually standard on every Outback for 2026, and it's got several different designs that you can choose from. My favorite is this design right here, where you can put the navigation map into the center. You can also do Google Maps if you have your phone connected with the wireless Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. Now, as we move back to the steering wheel, we've got that signature Subaru design. It has the leatherette trimming. Limited trim is where you get a heated steering wheel, so that's nice. Just be aware it is partially heated, so I'm thinking that's just the sides here. We also have manual tilt and telescoping for the steering wheel, and we have rain-sensing wipers. Now, taking a look at interior storage. Opening that up, we have plenty of space inside. It's got a felt lining down there at the bottom, and we'll donut test it some other time when we get one back home in Kentucky. Now you have some more storage through here, as well as their redesigned cup holders for 2026 with a more convenient location. And then you also get the wireless phone charging pad on this Limited trim level, just like you do on the Touring. And then finally, finishing our storage tour, we have a passenger storage shelf. As we come back to the shifter, just a very traditional style shifter, nothing complicated here. Pull back for drive. You can bump over here to the left to activate a manual shift mode for simulated shifts, and there are paddle shifters. When we head into reverse, here's our standard backup camera. So the Touring trim level does get the 360 camera. That is one kind of difference here. But as you can see, this version is quite large. It really takes up this display very nicely. And you have active trajectory and parking sensors. And then you also have an electronic parking brake with a brake hold function. The only thing you're missing is, again, that button to launch the 360 camera right there. Now, as we continue up, you're not going to notice much missing here either. So we've got the dual zone automatic climate control system, just like the other models. Physical controls for this new generation, so you don't have to mess around with the display at all to adjust anything with the climate. The Limited trim also has standard 3-stage heated seats. We just don't have the ventilated seats from the Touring model. And then one thing we have directly from the Touring model is actually our Harman Kardon sound system. So we were very impressed by the sound quality of this system when we were just testing it out. It really fills up the cabin nicely. And I think when you see the final price, you would be very impressed by the quality of the sound system that you get for that amount of money. Now, another thing you might be impressed with is the display. So Subaru has a brand new display for this 2026 Outback. This is a 12.1-inch display, and it's got their newest software on board. It's totally different from what it was previously. So limited trim still has a built-in navigation system. You can see what that looks like right there. When I click into the home page, you can see that you have kind of a basically a just ambient display. Then you have one with more details that you can customize, and then there's all of your applications, and then of course you have different settings and stuff all conveniently located through there. The performance of this system as well is much improved over the last generation. And you also have wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Up above we have a manual dimming mirror, and then the limited trim does come standard with a standard size sunroof.
And now let's go ahead and check out the rear seats. Now, of course, this is like any other version of the Outback. So when it comes to rear seat space, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. We're sitting at about 39.5 inches of legroom and 39.1 inches of headroom. The headroom is really what I want to point out because that's up about an inch in terms of rear seat headroom. So definitely the taller individuals here in the rear will appreciate this new generation of Outback because you have a lot more headroom, and, you know, just looking at it here in person, there's plenty of space. Now, of course, I brought along the official Car Confections ruler. That's so I can get knee measurement. Behind Drew's 5'8" seating position, I'm 5'9" for reference. We are looking at about 10 inches of knee room. That's really fantastic. Also, my feet can slide up underneath of these seats. And, by the way, these seats do have some recline, although it's not a ton. We have a nice center armrest with 2 cup holders inside, and we're not done with features yet because we have vents right here in the center section, 2 USB ports, a Type A and a Type A and a Type C, and then over on these sides, we have heated back seats. That's right, you get heated back seats starting here on this limited grade. So certainly for the price point, I think that's pretty exceptional to have as standard equipment. Now, let's go ahead and take a look over at the door trim. We have a nicely done one, soft touch on the upper part, the same cloth through the center section, and a leatherette on the armrest portion. And then down below, you have quite a bit of door storage, and that goes for all 4 doors, not just the rear seat area. You have quite a bit of door storage in every single door. And let's check out the cargo area. We do have a hands-free power tailgate. That's actually standard across every version of the Outback this year. And let's go ahead and take a look at the cargo area. So what we're sitting at are some pretty improved figures for 2026. It's about 35 cubic feet of space behind the second row of seats. And if I fold them down, which I can easily do because I have these little levers here on the side, they fold 60-40 split. Our maximum is 80 cubic feet. Now, if those of you are familiar with the Outback, you'll know that that's bigger than other versions. So it's about 5 cubic feet larger than the previous version in terms of maximum capacity. And in terms of the rivals, that's actually a very good figure. And speaking of the rivals, we'd encourage you to go to carconfections.com/vehicle rankings. We've looked at all the 2-row midsize offerings that you might be cross-shopping this Outback with. Things like the Honda Passport, the Toyota 4Runner. In the 10 categories that are most important to this buyer, things like cargo capacity, interior technology and luxury, powertrain choices, and value. So if you want to make an informed buying decision, definitely check that out. Now, I do want to get our cargo length, width, and height figures, even though we are on a strict time constraint with this limited model. We have about 80 inches of cargo length behind Drew's 5'8" driving position. From behind the second row of seats, we're about 41 inches. As far as the opening, they have improved that this year, 44 inches wide, and then the height is also quite good, 31 inches tall. I believe that is also improved for this new model. As far as the load-in height, that's still quite good. About 28 inches is our load-in height. That's definitely less than a lot of the SUVs you might be cross-shopping this with. Now, I can't get the floor up because we have the cargo cover installed, but you do have a spare tire integrated underneath of the floor.
And let's talk a bit about what is under the hood. So just like the previous generation, we have 2 different powertrain selections. You have a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated boxer engine, and then you have a 2.4 liter turbocharged boxer engine. The power figures on these are quite a bit different from each other. So you're looking at 180 horsepower for this standard motor you see under the hood of today's limited trim. This engine is going to be standard on almost all of the trims, so just the Wilderness will have that will have the upgraded engine, as a standard feature. Everything else will come with this engine as standard, but you can pay a little bit to upgrade to what is known as the XT. That is the 2.4 turbo I was describing, and that one has 260 horsepower and 277 pound-feet of torque. Now, like Mason was saying earlier, we are under a bit of a time constraint, so we really just wanted to kind of walk you through this trim level and show you how much value that they've packed into this, since it has a lot of the same features from the Touring trim level, but at quite a bit of a lower price. That being said, we're going to kind of jump over to a test drive where we're test driving the XT version of the powertrain to show you what you could get under the hood of this Limited.
Now, as always, we'll be discussing quite a lot, as you can see on the screen right now. But first, we need to go ahead and start with a hard acceleration before we get things like our official sound level reading.
All right, that is 60 miles per hour in the Outback XT. So this is the more powerful of the two powertrains. It will continue with this new generation to be offered with two different powertrains. This is the 2.4-liter turbocharged four-cylinder engine, making 260 horsepower and 277 pound-feet of torque. Now, as you just saw with that 0 to 60, I think power is pretty good on this model. This is pretty much the same powertrain as the last generation. They have made some small tweaks, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, but the power figures themselves are the same as the previous generation. And I think just like with that model, between the two different choices, this is the engine option that feels a little bit, better for, I think, an SUV of this size. The Outback kind of walks that line between compact and mid-size SUV, so it's a little bit bigger, and I think I certainly appreciate having that additional power.
Absolutely. I really love the torque of this powertrain. Now, it takes a second to kick in. It does have a little bit of lag there at the beginning, but once it does kick in, it really pushes you back in your seat, and I think it feels, like Drew said, a lot better than what you get in the standard powertrain. We have reviewed the standard powertrain multiple model years, before in the previous generation. That engine is also going to be pretty much unchanged for 2026 for the all-new version, which, by the way, is a 2.5-liter boxer four-cylinder. No turbos or anything on that one. 180 horsepower, 178 pound-feet of torque. So depending on what you're cross-shopping this with, that certainly is going to be, a little bit on the lower end when it comes to power figures. So be aware of that. If you want more power, I definitely would recommend getting this XT. It gives you a lot more of a premium experience. Speaking of the powertrains, the 2.5 Boxer 4 is standard on almost all of the trim levels. The Wilderness is the only one that gets the XT turbo powertrain as standard equipment. However, you can option it on to both the Limited and Touring. Obviously, we have the Touring here today, and we do have that optioned on.
Yeah, so there's another acceleration. Give you a little taste of that. We're going a bit uphill this time. And let's talk about the other element of the powertrain. So this will continue to have the Lineartronic CVT, like many other Subaru products. When I was accelerating there, you probably noticed that it does have some simulated gear changes. It actually has 8 simulated gear changes, so don't have any drone situation or anything like that, which I certainly appreciate. The other thing we were both just talking about was the fact that the engine itself seems very quiet. I think they've really done a great job of taking that noise out. It doesn't sound strained or anything, even when we're going uphill at full throttle.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. They didn't specifically say. They did say that they increased, concentration on making the cabin quieter. Of course, we will, put that to the test with our sound level reading, but they didn't specifically say that they did much to the engine. But I am kind of noticing here in person that it does sound quieter as compared to the previous generation, as well as other Subaru products that we've been in recently. It seems more premium, which I think is a welcome change. These Boxer engines can kind of be loud at times, so I think this is a really nice change to have that more premium feel of just giving you the power without it sounding so strained.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that would really be a good point to segue right into the actual sound level reading itself. So let me get us to our 55 miles an hour, which is what we like to take our sound level reading at.
Fan speed's 1. All right, so we have settled in at 59.5 decibels is our sound level reading, going 55 miles per hour. Now, we don't have to sit here and guess how it compares to the competition. We can find that at carconfections.com/sound level readings, where we've looked at all of the, two-row midsize SUVs you might be cross-shopping this with. That does mean it's not going to be like the quietest option that we've looked at in the segment. However, I'm certainly not surprised by that. As you can tell, we are not in Kentucky. We are in Arizona. Arizona has one of the loudest road surfaces out there in the entire country. We've been on many media drives in Arizona. It has loud roads. So we do look forward to getting a official sample back home in Kentucky to get you know, how quiet this cabin is. I think being under 60 decibels on a really loud road like this, I think is a great indication. Like I just said, Subaru was quick to point out in their presentation that they said NVH has been reduced by about 10% for this new generation. The engine, I definitely think, is quieter, and overall, I do imagine that they've done quite a bit to make this a quieter cabin. So I would
more sound deadening material for sure.
Yeah, so I think this will be one of the quieter options in the segment once we can get that official test back in Kentucky.
So there was our auto start stop system. They've obviously made some improvements to this over the previous generation. That's readily apparent with the very first. As soon as it activated, actually for the first time, we were like, oh, that's way better. They definitely smoothed it out a lot. It previously was pretty rough around the edges. But if you still don't like it, there is now a physical hard button right here next to the shifter. You can push that and defeat it without having to mess with the screen.
And I'm also noticing there's a physical button for the vehicle hold as well. So one of the things Subaru said also that they paid attention to was, you know, do customers really want a bunch of buttons all in the screen? And the answer was no. So they added physical buttons for things that commonly were used. The vehicle hold and the auto start stop are definitely two of those things. So I like that they're physical buttons, really easy to access. Now, let's talk about fuel economy as well. So for fuel economy, because we really have the same powertrains, we're not seeing drastically different numbers here. The standard model is 25, 31, 27 mpg. The XT, like today, is sitting at 21, 29, 24, so about 3 mpg worse for the turbocharged powertrain. Both of those numbers are going to be okay for this segment. It is down 1 mpg over the previous generation, I assume due to the little bit of boxier shape of this new Outback. I wish that they had maybe offered a hybrid powertrain. Maybe that is in the future for the Outback, but as of now, they haven't officially confirmed that there will or will not be an Outback hybrid. I don't see any reason why they maybe wouldn't add it in the future, though. Now that we're just kind of cruising through this town here and going over some bumps in the road, it's a great time for us to talk about ride quality for the Outback. That always was a pretty strong element for this model, and I'm really happy to tell you they continue to emphasize that in this vehicle. It has really good ride quality when you hit a bump in the road. It does a great job of soaking things up. They particularly also said that they focused on making these seats more comfortable. And, you know, I haven't spent a ton of time in this vehicle today. We do look forward to getting one for a week so we can fully test it out over hundreds and hundreds of miles. But my initial impressions of these seats are really quite good. They seem quite comfortable and supportive over, you know, longer distances. And like I said, I think the ride quality is very nice, even with the larger 19-inch wheels on the outside that this particular tester has.
Yeah, definitely, you know, if you're concerned about the bigger wheels, you know, try them out back to back. I think you might be able to feel a little bit more imperfection into the cabin versus the 18, but, you know, I don't think it's going to be disruptive to most people, that's for sure.
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of cars that you might be cross-shopping this with have even bigger wheels, 20 or 21-inch alloys, so even the top-end model with 19s is pretty much kind of the standard affair for most of the vehicles that you would be cross-shopping this with. Now, I do also want to point out we have standard symmetrical all-wheel drive as expected. It's a Subaru after all. And let's get into our Car Confections Slam Dunk and Airball, which is our favorite and least favorite element about the new Outback. Drew, why don't you go ahead and kick us off with the Slam Dunk of this model?
I think the Slam Dunk has got to be the interior and how much Subaru listened to their customer feedback. They really emphasized how they communicate with their customers. They're very passionate customers, and they let them know things that they don't like, and they really address those major flaws, I think, with the previous generation, specifically in terms of like physical buttons. The technology improvements are definitely very much appreciated, and then just like weird little tweaks and stuff, but like the cup holders, they really Americanized the cup holders to make them the right size to accommodate all the bottles that you might be using when you go on your adventures and stuff like that. I think they're little things that as a customer owns this product, they're going to just really come to appreciate.
Absolutely. Now, on the flip side, our airball is going to be, we wish they were offering a hybrid powertrain. We just actually attended like several hybrid drives this year, the Forester hybrid as well as the Crosstrek hybrid. We did that actually this model year. So quite frankly, we wish that they had an Outback hybrid. The same power plant, I think, would be fine in this vehicle, especially considering they're already selling one that has 180 horsepower, so it would be an improvement over that base powertrain setup. So hopefully in the future they will add that choice. I know a lot of buyers are, it's in high demand to have a Crosstrek hybrid or a Forester hybrid, so I imagine it would sell really well if they were able to make a hybrid system on this model as well. So hopefully that will be added in the future.
So as I whip it through the roundabout there a little bit, we'll talk about the dynamics. Of course, Outback has never really been a sporty product. It's not really going for that, very athletic feel on the road. But it's not sloppy or anything like that. You have a little bit of body roll, of course. This has, really good ground clearance, obviously, because it's made to, be able to go off-road for lots of adventures. And the steering, I think, has a good light feel, but is very responsive. That's kind of the main thing I notice is as soon as I go off-center, I get that immediate response.
Now we've got to talk pricing for this new Outback. So when it comes to prices, they have risen quite a bit for this new generation. So unfortunately on the base end, since we no longer have the base model, our prices will rise around $6,100 over the 2025 base model. So that's quite a bit of a leap. And this limited trim is also quite a bit of a leap as compared to what the 2025 example was. It's around $4,000 more expensive. Now one would argue you are getting more here. And a top end Outback can go to around $50,000 Now, this particular model is 26 Outback Limited. This is a standard powertrain. Our base price is $41,700. $395 optional paint, $1,450 destination. We're sitting at $43,580, which is still a pretty good price point, I think, for what you're getting here in this model. And if you're curious as to where it's manufactured, these Outbacks are now being made in Japan. If you're looking to buy a Subaru Outback or any new vehicle, we'd encourage you to go to carconfections.com/newcarquotes. The reason you should do that is we have a tool on our website that'll connect you with local car dealers in your area to get you the best price. It's also going to give you access to invoice pricing information, which is a great tool to use while dealer negotiating. If you'd like to take advantage of that, as well as things like our monthly payment tool, you can find a link to that in our video description, as well as a pinned comment down below. But buying a vehicle is about more than just the original MSRP, so let's talk about resale and reliability. First up, let's talk about resale value. As an economics graduate myself, we took the time to develop what we think is a good estimate for the Subaru Outback's potential resale value. We estimate that after 5 years and 60,000 miles, it'll be worth 63.03% of original MSRP, and after 10 years and 120,000 miles, 23.73%. Now, it's worth noting those are really good resale value percentages. It's actually the third best brand overall in the 5-year metric, which is exceptionally good.
Subaru is also in the top 5 when it comes to reliability. That's why we developed the Combined Reliability Index, which takes into account several reliability studies and combines them in a way that gives you the most holistic picture. Of course, that does mean Subaru is above the overall industry average.
Now, if you'd like to learn more about our resale values or our reliability data or our methodology, be sure to go to carconfections.com/resale and carconfections.com/reliability. Buying a new vehicle is a big decision, so you want to make sure you're making a smart purchase, especially if you're cross-shopping between different vehicle brands. Now, when it comes to your warranty, you have a 3-year 36,000-mile basic warranty, a 5-year 60,000-mile powertrain. You do not get any complimentary maintenance. Guys, that wraps up our in-depth review of the all-new 2026 Subaru Outback, this time in the limited trim level. If you enjoyed watching this trim level specific review, we'd encourage you to hop on over to our touring review as well, that you can find live on the channel. We also have a ton more automotive content, so you'll definitely want to subscribe down below to be a part of our Car Confections family. If you're already a part of our family, thank you so much for your continued support. We'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.